Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 24 of the Off the Dome podcast. Today we got a special guest on, David Daniel, aka Basketball Alert on TikTok. How's it going today, my man?
Good about yourself.
I am doing fantastic. I wish my Spurs had made a few trades in the trade deadline, and we got a few good players, but or we didn't really get any good players, but I mean, whatever. C'est la vie, I guess. Yeah, today's going to be a good episode. We're going to be talking about hated players in the NBA right now, particularly guys like Paul George, Danny Green, and we've each got a few kind of how narratives have sort of controlled their career. Trades, the trade deadline happened yesterday. Crazy. I mean, there was a few unexpected trades right there. Evan Fournier came out with a tweet that I don't think fuck Evan Fournier for that tweet, by the way.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I fell for the bait.
yeah, that was stupid. Like, everyone looked it up too, which is stupid. We'll get into trade talk. The Boston Celtics struggling. David, you are, of course, you're a Celtics fan, right?
Yes.
So everyone knows that. And of course, and we'll also touch on Kevin Durant's legacy. Let's get into, what do you want to start? Do you want to start with the hated players, or should we start with trade deadline or the trade talk, since that just happened?
Let's get into the trade deadline. It's been a while, 24 hours. I think
Yeah.
six trades went down yesterday.
Yeah, there were a lot. I've got all the trades pulled up here on NBA.com. I think we should just talk about maybe like the more prominent ones. We don't need to indulge into every single.
Yeah.
There are a few trades there that honestly I don't think anybody really cares about.
Yeah. A few of them are.
Yeah, let's start with first of all, what do you think? What do you think is the most significant trade that happened yesterday? What do you think will have the biggest impact on the season?
Nikola Vucevic to the Bulls, 100%, because they're in search for a late playoff push.
Yeah. Yeah. What sort of stood out from you at that point, or what are you sort of expecting from Chicago going forward here?
Well, they killed two birds with one stone. They're keeping Zach LaVine happy, and they're looking towards contending. So I really like it. They have two All-Stars, and they kept Markkanen and Kobe White in the deal. I thought it was a finesse.
Yeah, and just so everyone out there is aware, the official trade, I'm just kind of scrolling down to real quick. The Bulls got Nikola Vucevic and Al-Farouq Aminu. The Magic got Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., and two first-round picks. I think there were also some other assets in there that the Dallas Mavericks got. Those two first-round picks are pretty big. But the Bulls probably won't be that high up in the lottery unless something terribly happens this season. But looking at the standings right now, Chicago 19-24. They're 2 games out of, or a game and a half out of the playoffs. Holy shit, Boston is actually in the 8th seed now. I did not know Boston's doing that bad, bro. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's been a struggle.
Speaking of the Celtics, Evan Fournier's trade. Are you a big fan of that?
We got him for 2 second-round picks, so I don't know what Orlando's doing. That's like a giant finesse, and he's a 19 per game guy. I'm pretty sure he averages 19 points a game. So I thought it was a steal.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, Jeff Teague is going to be waived by the Celtics. From my understanding, Boston Celtic fans don't really care that much about Jeff Teague. I mean, he's not the most liked player.
I think he got traded with Tice.
Was he traded in there? Okay, it says it says on NBA.com he's waived. I think he's somewhere else now. But yeah, Daniel Tice is out of there too. Which honestly, if I was a Celtics fan, I mean, Tice is probably my favorite player on that team. I don't know how you feel about that.
Daniel Tice.
You don't like Tice?
I just think he gets bullied by every center.
Oh, he does. I remember what was it? We used to have that man bun, and Joel Embiid, I think, commented on Instagram or something. It's like, man bun's only in the game to get dunked on. He's been on every poster in the NBA, bro. It's hilarious.
Even Ibaka was switching threes on him in the playoffs last year. It was crazy. But I'm happy he's gone.
Yeah. Okay. So how about the Victor Oladipo trade? Because this is probably the one that I've got the strongest feelings about, because first of all, Miami looks nice. Miami looks really good right now. And secondly, the Houston Rockets, they're it's fucked. I mean, Houston, they're screwed.
They got finessed badly.
They turned James Harden into pretty much nothing. I mean, they have John Wall and then some assets and a few shitty players that they got back for Victor Oladipo. I don't know how this happens.
I guess they were just desperate to move Oladipo and lose him for nothing. And Miami was like, we're not giving you Hero or Duncan, and Houston had to make a decision.
Yeah. I mean, they got a former Celtic player, or two former Celtic players actually, Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley for Houston. And then they got a 2022 draft pick swap. So it's not even like their own pick. They have
That
the
pick's
trade
not going to
picks.
do anything for them.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing. I think Daryl Morey leaving, James Harden, of course, getting traded, and then Mike D'Antoni as well leaving. PJ Tucker's out of there now. I think this really shows. I mean, you look at the spot that Houston's in right now. It really shows you how good of a team or a general manager Daryl Morey was. Because now look what Philadelphia's doing right now. They're looking really good and looking to make a finals push. Whereas the team he left, the Houston Rockets, have lost 20 games in a row, and are just they're trash now. It's terrible.
They won one. They beat Toronto.
They beat Toronto, right? They had that 20-game win loss streak. Of course, they beat the Raptors, man. I fucking
Raptors made some moves too.
Where's Toronto's 11th right now in the Eastern Conference? Holy shit!
They're not making the playoffs.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
We
Kyrie doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, but I mean, were you surprised at all like that Kyle Lowry didn't get traded?
I was. I really wanted him on the Lakers or Philly. I thought Philly would have been perfect for him, but like Lakers didn't want to put THT in the deal, which was a bad decision. And it's going to be awkward. Kyle Lowry coming back next game. Like, I'm still here.
Yeah, it's like everyone was talking about it. It's his last time leaving the corporate Toronto. You say you think it's a bad move that the Lakers didn't want to put a THT in a deal? Kyle Lowry?
Yeah, I think like they're in win now mode, so I don't get why they're holding on to him. But like, if you could get him for Kyle Lowry,
yeah,
I don't understand. Like, Lakers didn't do anything.
The one place I'd push back on that is, I mean, Horton Tucker is what? He's 19, 20 years old. Kyle Lowry just turned 36, I think it is, 35 or 36. I think it's 35. 35. But I mean, you're getting 15 years difference there. And Horton Tucker's got promise, and I think you mentioned they are, of course, in a win now mode. But if you want to continue winning after LeBron James leaves you in about 2 years, Horton's probably going to be a big piece of that, don't you think?
Yeah, I understand that, but they didn't do anything. So I believe if you had a play in for Kyle Lowry, you should have done something.
Yeah,
I was disappointed in him. Like,
do you think Andre Drummond will land there?
He's meeting with 5 teams. I believe it's the Hornets, Knicks, Celtics, Clippers, Lakers, and I'm happy Nets aren't on the list. I prefer him on the Lakers rather than the Nets. Yeah. But I mean, I was surprised he didn't get moved.
Personally, I hope that and also Marcus Aldridge is another big man who got bought out. I hope that Drummond doesn't go to the Lakers or Nets. I would like to see him go to maybe a third kind of contending team, just to make it a little bit less of a 2-horse race, if you will. Because if he goes to Brooklyn, it's just like, all right, it's just another superstar there, or not really a superstar, but another really good player, former All-Star. And if he goes to Lakers, the same sort of thing. It's all right. Now you got 3 former All-Stars there, and it's just like, I mean, Marcus also was a former All-Star, but I think I'd like to see him go to a team like maybe not right now a contender, but or that could use him. Like if he goes to the Milwaukee Bucks, I'd really like that. I don't really know how financial would work, or like how the finances would work there. The Phoenix Suns, a team like that, just to make the playoffs a little bit more interesting.
It would. I'm biased, so I want him to go to Boston. I think that's the one thing that they're missing is rebounding, and they let go of Daniel Theis for that reason.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Boston's biggest mistake came when they didn't get Miles Turner in the offseason from the Indiana Pacers via trade or something like that. Because I think Boston had a good opportunity of getting him. They definitely had the possibility of the chance of getting Miles Turner, but that just never happened, which I think that's been their biggest mistake so far this year.
It wasn't their fault because the way the sign and trade works is Gordon Hayward makes the final call. Okay. And Indiana wasn't going to pay him $120 million. So I do believe that I don't put Miles Turner not going to Boston on Danny Ainge because I thought Gordon Hayward made the choice.
All right, that's fair. I did not know that. I thought that Boston had the opportunity to get him. But let's move on with Rajon Rondo, him going to the Clippers. That I think that's a trade that can win a championship. That's a championship caliber trade right there for the Clippers. What are your thoughts on that?
It was the most underrated move yesterday, I believe, because you have that playmaker to take that load off Kawhi. And he's definitely an upgrade over Pat Beverly. I hate Pat Beverly, but I like it a lot. I mean, they were also after Lonzo, but I think Rondo's a great. And if he does what he did last year in the playoffs for the Lakers, the team's going to be scary. I'm excited.
Yeah. And Rondo didn't do. I mean, he didn't play too much with the Atlanta Hawks, and it's sad to see Lou Will go. But I mean, I think that it's sort of at that stage where Lou Will, it's on the decline now. The I think the peak of Lou Will was really the first round of the 2018 playoffs against the Warriors when the 8 seed Clippers pushed the Warriors to
Six
game
games I played.
6. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think maybe the 7 seed. But I think that series right there was sort of the peak Lou Will. And after that, it sort of drizzled out. And last year in the playoffs, really, it wasn't, I don't think he wasn't that special, I don't think. So I think giving up Lou Will wasn't that bad of a pick or wasn't that bad of a trade for the Clippers at all. Um,
I liked it a lot.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing you mentioned. The Celtics don't really have a big man, no big or good rebounding stuff like that. The Clippers, they never had a true point guard. They never had a playmaker. So you're left with someone like Patrick Beverly running point, which you're not gonna win a championship like that when Patrick Beverly's
Not
your
even
best point guard.
close.
There's just no way. And finally, I think the last really big trade or semi big trade that happened, I think, or Aaron Gordon too. I'll get to that in a second. But Norman Powell leaving Toronto to go to the Portland Trailblazers. What are your thoughts on that trade?
It doesn't really make too much sense to me why Portland wanted more scoring. I wanted them to get more size because Nurkic has his injury problems. But I mean, I like it. My one concern is he's a free agent and he wants 20 million. I don't know if Portland is willing to pay him. But short term wise, I think it wasn't a bad move. I just expect them to do more.
Yeah, I mean, I think Toronto. Yeah, him being a free agent, he's been doing really good this year. Um,
I'm big on Norman Powell. He came out of San
yeah,
Diego.
yeah. You're from San Diego or you're living in San Diego, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. They gave up, or Portland gave up Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood for Norman Powell. I Portland's not going to win a championship because they made this trade. They've been doing very good this year. But I think a team that might win a championship in the future because they make a trade was the Denver Nuggets yesterday, trading for Aaron Gordon. How big of a fan are you of this trade for the Denver Nuggets?
I was a bit shocked by it, but I like it because now, like Aaron Gordon, people thought he was just a dunker, but we also thought that about Zach LaVine, and Zach LaVine went to a new situation and shut up all the haters. So I want that for Aaron Gordon, and I think Jokic will compliment him a lot and just start feeding him the ball, and he'll stick out more. So I really like it for them.
Yeah, I mean, full trade. The Nuggets did have to give up Gary Harris and RJ Hampton, which, if Gordon can pan out to be the sort of player that the Nuggets are expecting him to be, I don't think that's that bad of a trade. They give up also a future first round pick. But Aaron Gordon adds size to that team, and I think the Nuggets, they've got their point guard, they've got their guard in Jamal Murray, and they're more than happy, or they're more than okay with moving on from a guy like Gary Harris, and even a younger guy like RJ Hampton. Because when you look at what Jamal Murray's been able to do, and I'm a big Jamal Murray fan, I think when it comes to being clutch as fuck in big situations, I mean, I'll take Jamal Murray. He's up there with just about anybody else in the NBA that you want to put up there. I'm a big fan of this trade for the Denver Nuggets, 100%.
Yeah, me too. Jamal Murray is really sketchy to me because one day he'll drop 50 and then he'll drop like 2 points the next game or something like that.
Yeah.
I do believe he needs to fix his inconsistencies, and they're also depending a lot on MPJ, and they're hoping that he breaks out sooner rather than later. And I think that will play a big part whether or not they win a championship in the next couple years.
And I think honestly, if I'm betting on any young player right now to have a breakout season or breakout playoff series, Michael Porter Jr. I mean, I think he's not a bad player to pick because I mean, we've seen flashes similar to Jamal Murray. We've seen flashes of greatness. It's just now, can you put those flashes together and can you give us a solid 82 game season plus a 30 game playoff run where you are that player who can give us 30 points a game, give us the big clutch shots. Because we know Nikola Jokic by now. Nikola Jokic is gonna do Nikola Jokic things. He's gonna give you a triple double. He's gonna do his thing. One of the greatest passing big man of all time. We know we've seen it from Jamal Murray. We've seen flashes of Jamal Murray where he just does incredible things, and we've seen the same thing from Michael Porter Jr. Now, can we get all that together? And I think Denver Nuggets, they're going to be a huge threat to a lot of good teams in the Western Conference down the line, 100%.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I mean, the Denver Nuggets, they've always had great chemistry. So I think they'll put the pieces together, and I just hope they get like a deeper bench would be nice. And I don't know, I'm excited for the Denver Nuggets.
Yeah, So that's the big trades that happened. Is there anything else you want to add to the trades before we move on from that?
Trade it now.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think we
that
covered everything.
summarized everything. Most of the ones were just pretty random, like Valencia to the Heat.
Yeah, I mean, there was some other small little ones like that. The Spurs got Marquise Chris, who I just learned this has the lowest winning percentage of any player in the NBA. It's like 28% or some shit like that, Marquise Chris. So happy
I,
the Spurs got him.
I wish they moved DeRozan.
Yeah,
I know
same.
he's out of there. I know he's out of there.
I was gonna say that too. I mean, I'm a Spurs fan. I think DeRozan's been doing great this year. He's a hard player to move though because he's getting paid so much money. Like he's getting paid more money than Giannis Antetokounmpo is this year. Like it's ridiculous.
How big is his contract? I thought he was making like 31.
It's like I think he's making 27 million this year, and then next year, or according to ESPN, that is like ESPN Trade Machine, and then next year he's a free agent. So no one really wants to pay him that much money for a short period of time. You know what I mean? Like it's a.
Doesn't he have a player option this
Tough.
offseason?
I'm not sure. I don't really know that much about his contract. I just know that when I was trying to find like different trades for him on ESPN Trade Machine, it was hard to find a realistic one. That being said, I didn't really dig into it too much. So I just ended up trading DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard and it worked. So I was like, all right, let's do that. Bet.
But we know he's out of there sooner, probably in the offseason.
Yeah, probably. Let's move on to do you want to go to talk about the Boston Celtics real quick?
Yeah, I do. Because there's
Okay.
been a lot of like so many narratives about this team. And the biggest thing is Smart, Brown, Tatum, Kemba have only played like a short amount of time together. I think before these past couple games, like 36 total minutes. So I just think they're struggling to find these pieces together. And do we have too many wings? And we just need that one size in there, I believe. But there's just been a lot of like weirdness going on.
Yeah, I
Hart's
think
been hurt.
from watching Boston Celtic games this year, they're obviously they don't have a big man. That's been the big thing. They need to. I mean, because I think I'm a big Kemba Walker fan. I think that if he was still in his old situation in Charlotte, he could still give you 25, 30 points a game because he's a really good scorer. And I'm a big fan of Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, but it's just it hasn't been coming together this year. And how far can you see this team going in the playoffs?
If they don't get Drummond and they stick with this current roster, they are a second round exit.
100%. You think? Do you think? I mean, they could probably get bounced in the first round, though, depending on seeding. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
I do think they bounce back maybe to like the fifth or sixth seed. I just like, I don't know. I just think like Kemba Walker is one of those guys that he won't do what most All Stars did and take a back seat to not one but two players.
Yeah.
So I just believe that Kemba needs to know when to hit the on switch. Like if Brown and Tatum are struggling, he needs to hit that on switch, and that's the biggest thing. When he plays well, Celtics play well.
Right. So you want to see more from Kemba Walker, not necessarily taking a back seat because if anybody was watching the NBA back in 2018, 2017, they know that Kemba Walker was doing crazy things in Charlotte on a nightly basis. I think that the last year before he went to Boston, there was like for the first half of the year, he looked like he was in the MVP conversation, just with the way he was balling out that year. The Hornets, though, I'm looking at the standings right now. Charlotte, the Hornets are fourth right now in the Eastern Conference, which I mean, the Eastern Conference this year is just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it's nuts. I don't understand it at all.
They will take a backseat just because I think LaMelo Ball's injury really affected them.
Yeah,
I still think they can make the playoffs because Gordon Hayward's playing out of his mind.
I
But
mean,
their
Gordon,
future's looking bright.
yeah, I mean, Gordon Hayward's another one of those guys who, before he came to Boston, people forget, I mean, he was doing crazy things in Utah, before, of course, his terrible injury. But yeah, is that sort of what else has been kind of what else do you think is wrong with the Boston Celtics? Like, what else do you think has led to the fact that I mean they've got good players in the roster, but they're currently 21 and 23 with the 8 seed in the Eastern Conference. And the way things are looking, if the playoffs started today, they would get bounced in the first round by Philadelphia.
Yeah, I do agree with that. The thing with the Celtics, they're really tough to digest because like we have Tatum taking these crazy shots at the worst moments, but like I do want to put some blame on Brad Stevens because like we'll be down by like 3 points with 20 seconds left and he won't call timeout and he'll like do it at wrong situations and he doesn't know how to handle the clutch time. And he has these like certain rosters like There was a time where Tatum was in a close game with like 4 other scrubs, like Pritchard, Naismith, and I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, why are you doing this to Tatum? Like, they're gonna double team Tatum. What are you gonna depend on Naismith?
Yeah. I mean, that's tough. And Boston, they've got a few really. I think that Boston's got a few nice guys that, like you mentioned, Peyton Pritchard. He's one of those guys that because I used to watch or because I watched college basketball a little bit, he's one of those guys who I always cheer for. Same as Carson Edwards. You see him playing college basketball, and you always cheer for him. Um, so I mean, Boston. That's why they've sort of become one of the teams that I like a little bit more than I used to like, or a lot more than I used to like. Um, but yeah, I mean, Jason Tatum, I think he's kind of the future of the team. Do you think that the duo of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown is that a duo that can win a championship in the next few years here or ever?
There was comparisons to them being a young Paul George and Kawhi. I don't know. I wouldn't go that crazy right now. I could definitely see them with the right supporting cast, but with the cast they have around them now, I just think that they're declining, like the team wise, not
Yeah.
their like skill wise, but the team is declining and the years are going by. So they need to get some help around them.
Yeah, I mean, they're both very young players. When you look at other players when you look at other teams that have won NBA championships ever throughout history, the best players are not normally 23-year-olds who are just fresh out of university. It's normally like a much older, experienced player who's. I mean, last year the best player was 35 years old with LeBron James on the Lakers. So I mean, I think Tatum they definitely have time, and if Boston can keep those two guys, those are two guys that I think could win multiple championships for Boston in the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah, they're both locked in on long contracts. And like we all make the joke like Tatum's only 23, but like that's the deal.
But he
He's only
is.
23. Why are you putting so much pressure on him? Like,
He's only 23, man. Come on, give him
like that
time.
2018 playoffs messed up everything because you put this gigantic pressure on this team and like they're expected to come to the finals the next year, these two
Yeah,
22-year-olds. And it's like, take off the pressure. They're amazing.
yeah. I mean, and I think though the pressure it hurts him now. You look at it, it's like, oh, they have too much pressure on him. But I think that in a few years from now, when they're gonna be much older and more consistent players, more responsible players, and they're gonna have already had all that time where they're gonna be so used to having the pressure on them that by the time they get to the NBA Finals, they're gonna be like, yo, we've had this much pressure on us since we were 19, 20 years old, with everybody thinking that we were going to beat LeBron James in 2018 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Since then, everyone's been hyping up the Celtics. So I think in the long run, all this pressure that's being put on them right now is going to help them out because they're just going to be so used to it. You know what I mean? They're going to grow that thick skin, which I think that's really good for them.
Yeah, but I think when the pressure is off at a young age, I think it is helpful. But I understand when you get to the late playoffs, like the pressure is on. You have to come out of the East at some point.
Yeah, that's why I think, like, honestly, I think in the short term the pressure's bad because it's just going to lead to them losing more. But in the long term, I think it's good because because they'll make the finals. I mean, knock on wood here, but I think the Celtics will probably make the finals with these two guys eventually. And once they get there, they're gonna be like this is the amount of pressure that we always have on us. Like this is everyone's always been hyping Jason Tatum up. I'm excited for Boston. Honestly, I like this team. I like this team. I mean, at least I like those two players and Marcus Smart too. I'm a big Marcus Smart fan.
Don't sleep on Robert Williams. That guy in the short minutes that he plays, he should be starting. They play today and they don't have Tice, so I'm hoping he's starting. I
Yeah.
don't know if Brad will start him. They're really cautious with him because last year he had a big hip injury. So I guess they're being cautious with him. But when the minutes are there, he plays great.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So now that we got the Boston Celtic talk out of the way and the NBA trades out of the way, let's move on to another topic here that we thought would be a good topic to talk about. Player narratives that have sort of been taking over the NBA, and more specifically, negative player narratives. Narratives like Paul George is a choker, stuff like that. The narratives about Pascal Siakam and other guys like that. What's sort of your thoughts on those sort of narratives?
I mean, when your name is Pandemic P, like that's just like to the point. Like, come on now, you named him after the pandemic, And like people were saying Paul George is a top 10 player in the league, and then out of nowhere he has one bad playoff run and they all start hating on him when it wasn't just him. That Clippers team fell apart in last year's playoffs. Everyone couldn't buy a bucket. It wasn't just him, it was Kawhi, it was Lou Will, and people just put all the hate towards him. And they said, oh, he's not even a top player in the league anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think first, I mean, I'm a strong Paul George is easily top 20 in the NBA. I think he's top 15 in the NBA. I wouldn't say he's top 10. I've never really had him top 10, I don't think. I mean, trying to think back of where I had him back a few years ago, back when he was in OKC, before this whole kind of Paul George is a choker. Because back in Indiana, no one looked at him as a choker. We looked at him as a guy who was going to take down the big three in Miami. And of course, a terrible injury happened. But you mentioned that Clippers series last year. People don't really realize Kawhi had two bad games. He had game 7 was terrible, and game I think it was 5 was terrible too. I mean, for the most part though, Kawhi Leonard. He was giving him 30 points a game. He was doing his thing, but he fell apart in the biggest moment. That game 7, Lou Will. This guy everyone's talking about, he's just as clutch as anyone else in the NBA. Lou Will was falling apart. Everyone was falling apart. The one thing is, though, doesn't it seem a little bit like Paul George? He's the guy who you bring in to win a championship. He's the guy that you bring in to put you over the top. Do you not think that maybe he deserves a little bit of kind of pushback when he's supposed to be this guy to win you an NBA championship, and then he just crumbles on the biggest stage?
We're judging it off their first playoff series last year. Maybe if the same thing happens 2 years in a row, then I'll say something. But like I said, in Indiana, people appreciate him, and OKC people appreciate him. But the LA effect, like they're gonna give him, they're never gonna let him like rest. Like if he has a bad game, shut up your phone, Paul George. Do not check Twitter.
And I think that's why a big reason, and I feel like it was almost like the Clippers as well as a whole was kind of getting that sort of treatment, because this year no one's really talking about the Clippers that much. You know what I mean? And it feels like no one's really hyping up the Clippers like they deserve to be hyped up. And that's why I think the Clippers are a much more dangerous team than they are this year. Even though they are a 3 seed, they're not playing amazing right now. But I think they're a much more dangerous team, and they have a better chance of winning the championship this year than they had last year, because they're not really in the spotlight right now.
Yeah, I agree. The Clippers are my sleeper team, not sleeper team, but I think they have the best chance to come out of the West, especially if AD and Braun aren't fully healthy, because they're struggling right now with those injuries. And I think Clippers they're nice right now. Like Rondo was a big addition. They still have Patrick Beverly. They still have Luke Kennard, which is stepping up these past few games. He's been balling. So I definitely do feel like Clippers have a big chance of coming out of the West.
Yeah, for sure. And other players that I think sort of fit that mold, I've written down a few players here who sort of get that mold fit the mold where they only really get media attention when they have a bad game. You know, like Paul George, he'll rip off 20 straight games where he's giving you 25 and 5 a night. But then he has that one game where he shoots 2 of 30 and it's like always shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's obviously that's an exaggeration, but he has that one bad game and everyone else is riding him. I've got a few other guys like that. First of all, Paul George is a big one. Next, Danny Green. Speaking of the LA effect, granted, he had some bad games with the Lakers, but I think he just got blown way out of proportion. Look at him right now. In Philadelphia. He's balling out. He's
a solid role player. And like that shot in last year's finals, he was getting death threats after missing that shot. Like, he's not that guy.
That's ridiculous. Yeah.
He's not that guy. Like, the fact that he was even that open was surprising, but he's not that guy. But if he made that shot, they would be hyping up Danny Green. They would have a banner of him. The LA effect is absolutely insane, and that's why I feel like a lot of players try to get out of there.
Yeah, it's weird. Like the Lakers and Clippers is a place where everyone wants to play, but once they start playing there, unless you're winning, it's not a fun place to play, because you're just getting. I mean, look at all the young guys. Jordan Clarkson, he used to be on the Lakers, and now he's going crazy in Utah. Julius Randle, D'Angelo Russell. They're all doing really good things after they left the Lakers. I mean, it's the LA effect, especially on the Lakers. If you're not winning, you're getting hated. And that's just the fans there. I mean, that's just the Lakers fans all over the world who are just hating on you. Danny Green's one of those guys, and Rudy Gobert as well. I don't know how big of a fan you are of Rudy Gobert, but I'm a huge fan of Gobert.
I am too, because he makes us realize that defense really is important, and I do feel like he's the vital point of the Utah Jazz team. And I like what he does with rim protection and rebounding and shot blocking. I really like Rudy Gobert. He was very hated last year, and when he got that big $200 million contract, and the way Shaq demolished him,
Yeah.
and I do believe he deserved the contract, and they have him for long term, and I think he's very scary on the Jazz.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was one of those guys who were like, "How the fuck is Rudy Gobert getting paid this much money?" Because it was like the third biggest contract of all time. I'm like, how does this work? But when you look at the kind of money that's being thrown around in the NBA right now, Rudy Gobert, and look what Utah's doing this year. This is a guy that can help a team win a championship, especially the Utah Jazz.
Yeah.
And one more guy I had here, I just wanted to toss in there. James Harden used to fit this mold. I think Harden was the number one example of a guy who would play amazing, but he'd had those few games where he plays like trash, and then he's just labeled this guy who is a big choker. He can't win in the playoffs, even though the only teams he's losing to are the greatest team of all time, the Golden State Warriors, or like the San Antonio Spurs, or like really good teams like that. Um, I mean, I think Harden used to fit that mold. Now, not so much though.
Yeah, people are always going back to what Kobe said about him and said his type of won't win a championship, and I think that was blown out of proportion to the absolute max.
Yeah.
And Harden, no doubt in my mind that he's going to go down as like a top 5 greatest scorer of all time, if not better than that.
Oh yeah.
And people just need to appreciate how good he is. I know like his trade request out of Houston was sketchy, but he's playing out of his mind right now.
Yeah. I mean,
Durant on the sidelines.
like similar to when Kevin Durant. I think we'll get into Kevin Durant a little bit later. But when we said when Kevin Durant came to Golden State and everyone's shitting on him because he took the easy way out, it's like, all right, he took the easy way out, but he's pulling his own load around here. He's going out there. He's the best player on his team in Golden State. And Harden, he's playing. He's the best player on the Brooklyn Nets right now. Even the games when Kevin Durant was playing, James Harden, he's a walking triple double. And you see it especially now that Kyrie's been on and off. KD's been on and off. Harden's proven to us that, yeah, his first few games in Brooklyn, he was giving us, 24, 20 points a game. But now he can turn it back on. He can go out there and give you 30, 35, 40 points, and an efficient 35, 40 points as well. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on James Harden.
Yeah, but I feel like that hate has died down a lot.
That's what I was saying. Yeah,
James
I mean,
Harden.
it's like it used to be James Harden for sure.
Like 2 guys that I would add to your list is Ben Simmons and Russell Westbrook is what people call him.
Yeah.
Those guys like can't play a bad game without getting criticized.
Yeah, like
Especially Ben. Like he could do everything nice, but he can't shoot. Like he was never able to shoot. Why are you putting that random pressure on him? Like we're not expecting him to. And Philly's winning. Like there's not a stat out there that shows he's hurting the Sixers.
yeah. I mean, and that's probably one of my favorite things about, like, I didn't realize how much people hated Ben Simmons until I started reading through like Instagram comments. When Ben Simmons, I think it was after Ben Simmons was talking shit about Rudy Gobert guarding him during a game, and Ben Simmons scored like 42 points that game or something like that. And I was like, all right, everyone's going to be backing up Ben Simmons here because he's shit talking one of the most hated players in the NBA and Rudy Gobert. And I read through the comments and everyone's just taking the side of Rudy Gobert. I'm like, wait, I thought everyone hated Gobert, but if it's against Ben Simmons, no one likes Ben Simmons. I was like, I did not know that people felt like that about Ben Simmons. I think it's fucking hilarious. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I know. It comes to the point where it's funny, but then there's always that toxic people that say he shouldn't be in the NBA. He's hurting the NBA. He should retire. He doesn't deserve to get paid this amount of money. But yeah, because like I said, the memes are funny. Like Russell Westbrook, people will laugh at it.
Yeah.
But there comes to a point where you're crossing a certain line and like bashing a player for no reason.
Yeah, I love to make those jokes about Jason Tatum only being 22 or 23, but there's a difference between making a joke and then actually just being serious. Because there's going to be Celtic fans in 5 years that's going to be like, oh, Jason Tatum, he's only 30. Don't worry about it. He's only 30. Man, he's 30. He's in the prime of his career, bro.
This guy doesn't age. He'll be 19 forever.
Yeah, he'll be 19 forever, 100%. 19, 30 years on Earth and 19 years in our heart, baby. That's it right there.
Yeah.
And Pascal, how about Pascal? How about a guy like Pascal Siakam? You think he fits this?
So there's a narrative that's never been told, but okay, so this is what Pascal went through. Kawhi Leonard comes to Toronto, they win a championship side by side.
Yep.
Kawhi Leonard leaves, and you're expecting Pascal to take the role of a top 4 player in the NBA? Just like that? Like, come on now. Like that role is mostly impossible to fill. So I feel like he's not ready for it. He wasn't ready then when Kawhi first left, and I still think he's not ready now. But he's averaging a quiet 20 points a game.
Yeah.
But that narrative wasn't there.
Sorry about that. I was like, there's a fire truck going by my house, and the fire alarm in my house is going off or like an hour ago. So I was like, holy shit. I'm gonna just cut. I'm fucking. No, I'm gonna keep that part in. That was weird.
That was funny.
All right. I'm a little bit scared right now, but who cares? Yeah, I mean, Pascal Siakam definitely did have big shoes to fill, and he choked up last year, I think, in the playoffs big time. I think it's fair to say that. He's only got one move, and that's a spin move. So it's tough there for Raptors fans. Is there anyone else you want to throw into this conversation before we move on to Kevin Durant?
I mean, I just want to touch on Westbrook a little bit because people are so like bipolar towards Russell Westbrook. Like he'll have a bad game, which he was battling through a quad injury, I believe, in the beginning of the season. He didn't tell anyone about it. And then he gets healthy and then he starts balling and everyone switched up. Russell Westbrook isn't washed. Oh, you were just saying he was washed last week. Like this guy gets way too much hate.
Yeah.
In which none of his teammates in the past has said anything negative about him. Not even Harden. Harden just said it wasn't meant to be. Durant had nothing negative to say about him. Ibaka, Enes Kanter, Victor Oladipo, no negative stuff to say about him. But the media gets in people's heads.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about living in the modern world, man. Like you do good one week, you do bad the next week, and then everyone just flip flops their opinion on you. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. But that's a good point you bring up, that no teammates ever talk negatively about Russell Westbrook. He, from the outside, he might look like a ball hog who's just trying to run the show himself, and he might jack up some dumb shots. Part of the reason Kevin Durant left OKC, people say, is because of Russell Westbrook. But at the end of the day, he's the hardest working player in the NBA. He's never going to give up on your team or you. I think he's one of those guys who I'd love to see win a championship. Him and Chris Paul, I'd love to see him win a championship.
Yeah, Westbrook's my favorite player because he just keeps it real. He puts 110% into everything he does. And even last year, when they were down against the Lakers, he wouldn't stop fighting until the buzzer went off.
Yeah, and you got to respect that. 100%. Let's move on to Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook's former teammate. KD, his legacy. It's an interesting one. It's a weird one. Some will say it's a plastic one. It's fake. What are your thoughts on Kevin Durant's legacy?
It hurts a lot because Kevin Durant has had so many opportunities to rewrite his legacy or write his legacy. Like going back to his free agent decision to go to the Warriors, he could have went to any other team, stayed in OKC, but he chose to go to a super team, win 2 championships, and then he goes to Brooklyn, hopefully to get his own team. And I'm excited for it. Like if he can win his first real ring, and I'm saying real ring because people make excuses for the first 2. And now, like, he pursued James Harden. People are saying he had nothing to do with it. He orchestrated it. Now with the offseason, and you think you're not going to trade for James Harden and not run it by Durant. Like, come on now.
Yeah. Kevin, like, and I saw this thing, too, is, like, Kevin Durant. So let me get this straight real quick. The Warriors needed Kevin Durant to get past LeBron James. And without Kevin Durant, they wouldn't have got past LeBron James. So Kevin Durant coming there and he led that team to multiple championships. I think that if you take someone like, I think the Warriors still could have beaten the Cavs without Kevin Durant. But then again, if you just put Kevin Durant on the team without Steph Curry, I still think that team can beat the Cavaliers. I think Kevin, like I said earlier, like he joins these big teams, but then he pulls his weight around. He's not just getting carried by Steph Curry. No, he's going out there and he's hitting the biggest shots of the season. He's hitting the daggers and he's winning finals MVP. I think he pulls his weight around. But that being said, his team is still winning the championship without him, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I this is unpopular, but I think he needed the Warriors more than the Warriors needed him because they went through LeBron
Yeah,
the first time, and I do believe they could have done it again, especially if Kyrie requested the trade at that certain time and stuff like that.
I don't even know if he needed the Warriors. I think that he like OKC was going to win a championship the next year. I always say the 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 Warriors didn't need Kevin Durant to get past LeBron because if you play that 2016 Finals over 100 times, LeBron fans will hate me for this, but the fact of the matter is, if you play the 2016 NBA Finals over 100 times, the Warriors are going to win that 95 times, 99 times out of 100. They just will. They were the better team. I always say the Warriors needed Kevin Durant not to beat LeBron, but they needed Kevin Durant so they could beat the OKC Thunder because that OKC Thunder team was coming and they were going to beat the Warriors. I think they would. The next year they could have beat them.
Yeah, I guess it was like this kind of beat 'em, join 'em type thing for
Yeah.
Durant. And like I said, going back to what you just said about the 2016 finals, if you run it 100 times, like there's no way the Warriors are going to go scoreless 4 minutes ever again.
Yeah, that's just not going to happen. Like that with that much star power. And like there's so much weird shit that happened in that finals. The Bogut injury, you look now at Andrew Bogut, it's like, all right, so what if he's hurt? But people forget he was a big part of the Warriors back then. Draymond Green suspension. There was a lot of things
That
like
was
that.
big.
Yeah,
He's on record saying if he didn't get suspended, they would have won.
I think they probably could have. I mean,
Yeah,
I
they
think
would.
a lot of people would like. I think a lot of like LeBron James fans would admit that because Draymond was such a big piece of the Warriors, and he missed the turning point, the game that really flipped it on his head, flipped the series on his head, in Game 5. But I mean, and in Kevin Durant, if he wins, and I have a hot take here, real quick. James Harden or the Houston Rockets almost beating the Warriors in 2018 is almost as impressive, if not more impressive, than Kevin Durant winning the NBA championship back to back. Honestly, hand to God, I think that. I mean, Houston had no business taking the greatest team of all time to 7 games, missing their point guard for the last 2 games, missing 27 straight threes in Game 7, having some of the worst officiating ever in the last 10 minutes of Game 7, and still only losing
Or like
by
7
like
points.
7 points. I mean, they had no business being in that series. That to me is more impressive than Kevin Durant joining already the best team of all time and having an easy cakewalk to the NBA Finals or through the NBA Finals to the NBA championship.
And if Chris Paul didn't go down, they would have a championship ring, each of them. Harden and Chris Paul. I do
100%.
believe that.
Yeah.
But going back to that, like I also do think that Dirk's one ring is more impressive than KD's back-to-back rings with the Warriors.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Dirk's one ring is more impressive than Kevin Durant's entire career, bro. 100%.
It literally is, and he did that to himself. Like he values more about winning than legacy. When he knows he could be the best player on a team that doesn't have 2 other All-Stars.
Yeah. I mean,
But
Kevin Durant, he's an all-time great player, but I think and people will try to compare like LeBron James kind of going to Miami. And I think LeBron going to Miami is a similar sort of move as Kevin Durant, because you're bringing together a super team. But I think a guy like Kawhi Leonard, you see Kawhi Leonard bouncing around the league. It's like, all right, he's bouncing around the league, but he's not going to teams that look like. I mean, the Clippers when they got Kawhi, it looked like it was over. But Kawhi had the option to go to the Lakers that season, and in Toronto, he forced his way out of San Antonio, goes to Toronto and wins a championship. No one saw that coming. The only people who thought
want to be there.
Yeah, he didn't even want to be there, and he left after leading a team to the NBA championship. And back to that, I just every year I have to remind people that the only reason why the NBA is somewhat competitive is because Kawhi Leonard had mercy on the league and decided not to join the Lakers in summer 2019 and took his talents to the Clippers. I mean, because he could have gone to the Lakers and we wouldn't have to play the next 2 years of NBA basketball. I just want everyone to remember that because
he could have pulled the Durant before Durant pulled the Durant.
Yeah, I mean,
he chose not to. He made the NBA crazy competitive, like the duo era. I wish it was longer, but I mean, Kawhi did that.
Yeah, and I really do like the duo era. The Brooklyn Nets have kind of fucked it up, but I mean,
yeah.
I mean that's why I kind of wanted to see. I want James Harden to win a championship so bad. It just sucks that it has to be now with that team in Brooklyn. I'd love to see the Milwaukee Bucks knock them out. That'd be really cool. If the Giannis Antetokounmpo, if he can somehow lead the team through Brooklyn, I'd love that.
Yeah, I mean, I have a crazy hot take. Like, I'm gonna get a lot of heat for this, but if Kawhi wins a ring with the Clippers before Durant wins one in Brooklyn, when we look at the all-time greatness, I think Kawhi passes Durant up.
I mean, he has to. I don't even know. Like, honestly, I don't know if that's a hot take. Like, I don't
No
know.
one's talking about it.
That's definitely controversial because Kevin Durant, from a talent perspective, is much more talented than Kawhi Leonard. He's a better scorer, better. Kawhi really is only better at defense. But that's
Yeah,
it.
better, but I'm talking about greater.
Greater,
Like,
exactly.
great best is completely different to me.
Yeah,
I think
I
when
mean,
it's
I
all
think
said
that,
and done, Kawhi could pass him up.
yeah, I agree with that. Where do you have Kevin Durant right now, like all time, like as far as greatness goes?
I feel like he could make the top 10 by the end of his career, but it's hard to like. I don't have the list in front of me, but I think like he could make just outside the top 10.
Like right now, for me,
He wonder-
KD's at least top 15 for me all time, despite his
Yeah,
championships kind of being fluke. Because you mentioned that being better and being greater are two different things. But part of greatness is how good you are at basketball, and Kevin Durant is ridiculous at basketball. I mean, he just is for me. And Kawhi Leonard might. I mean, I think Kawhi definitely has cracked the top 30 of all time as far as greatness goes. It's tough. It's tough.
and he's a two-way player too.
Yeah. I mean, he
So
certainly
yeah,
is. Um, but yeah, you're saying that Kawhi Leonard could pass Kevin Durant if he wins a championship. I mean, I think even if KD gets a ring before Kawhi Leonard does, I think Kawhi still has a chance because a ring with the Clippers is more valuable than a ring with the Brooklyn Nets right now, 100%.
yeah, it would be their first ring, and
Yeah,
like people are sleeping on Kawhi. People are forgetting about Kawhi,
yeah,
and he's gonna prove them wrong one way or another.
yeah. I'm a big Kawhi. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA, 100%. Is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap things up on episode 24?
Yeah. So Durant, I don't know. It just hurts that he could have changed his narrative. And I really hope Nets don't win a championship. Like if it was Nets and Lakers, I'm cheering for the Lakers. I don't give an
What?
F.
Man, fuck the
I
Lakers,
don't
bro.
give an F. Like I feel like it'll hurt the NBA. But I will say this: the Nets team has a chance to push greater talent. Like now we're seeing this Nets team, other players are gonna try to do the same thing and make NBA more competitive and balance things out.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
Clippers could get Lonzo or something like that,
I
or it could
think
be just more competitive.
we've seen it time and time again over the past 10 years. The only player who can bring balance to the NBA is Kawhi Leonard. He brought balance back in 2014. He brought balance in 2019. I mean, I don't know if he'll bring balance this year, but next year for sure. If the Lakers win an NBA championship this year, Kawhi Leonard will stop that 3P next year in the playoffs. And if the Brooklyn Nets win a championship this year, Kawhi Leonard is going to be the guy who's going to bring balance to the NBA. He's the Thanos of the league, man. He snaps his fingers, and the NBA just kind of resets real quick. The NBA kind of just chills out. It's like, all right, let's reset. Let's make some more trades. Let's switch the teams up a little bit. Kawhi Leonard, he's the ruler of the league. He just brings balance when it's necessary. That's what I love about the guy.
And he's a free agent. I don't know if he leaves the Clippers if they get bounced again, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Is he a free
I
agent
don't know.
this summer? Is it this
I
summer or
think he
next
has a
summer?
player option. I
This
think it's a
summer.
player
Okay.
option.
I want
Because
him to
Paul
win.
George extended.
Yeah, I want to see him win in with the Clippers. I'd like to see him get a championship with the Clippers before, because I don't really know where else he'll go. Like I don't know. I haven't really thought about it, so I don't know.
I really want him to team up with Giannis like really bad.
Yeah,
But I don't think he'll ever go to Milwaukee, and that's the biggest issue there. I really want him to team up. I think that would be over if he teamed up with Giannis.
I would love to see that. I mean, yeah, Kawhi had to suffer through a year in Toronto, the cold. I don't for some reason I don't think Kawhi Leonard likes the cold very much. In Milwaukee, it's a cold place.
But no, I do think he remains with the Clippers, and I think that they can win a championship. And I think this is their best opportunity because something fishy is going on in LA right now. They're being really sketchy with the AD injury.
Yeah, you think that's more serious than they're making it out to be?
Stephen A came out and said that it is because they're giving 0 to no updates on him, and then even Brooklyn with KD they're not giving 0 to no updates on him.
Yeah.
It's insane. I do think it's serious, and I do think they need to make a move. Like, if they don't get Drummond, they're fucked. They're not winning shit this year.
Yeah, it's weird that in a year where there are so many superstars who have been hurt, Kawhi Leonard is not, which is like, what is going on? Like, what? It's a weird year to be an NBA fan, 100%. Anything else you'd like to add, David?
No, I think we wrapped it up. We wrapped it up.
Thank you very much for joining episode 24, David. Whenever you want, anytime you want to come back on, love to have you, man. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in to episode 24 of the Off the Dome podcast. Kanye, Mike Dean, hit him with the outro music. Peace out, y'all.
Let me get more volume.